Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This is 10 examples of astral projection in pop culture. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of Astral Club, you can do so. And when you join Patreon, you'll get a downloaded library of episodes that you can put on your podcast app and listen to anywhere. No commercials, email where we can talk back and forth, and of course, advanced videos on Sunday. If you're interested, the link is in the description. Next up, private astral projection lessons. If you'd like to learn to astral project or just tune up your current abilities, I'd be glad to work with you. And all you have to do is request information, and the email is also in the description. Okay, astral projection in pop culture. I found these 10 examples just by thinking about them. So I'm sure you can find a ton more, and I'd like to hear about them in the comments too. These I just listed offhand as I was thinking about it. But I always have mixed feelings about this. Number one, I like the idea that information about astral projection or out-of-the-body experiences is being distributed widely to millions of people because it's typically a niche topic and there's only so many different sources. Yes, there's a lot of books, but if you're not looking for them, you probably won't find them. So that's why I like pop culture talking about it, because it can reach a lot of different people who wouldn't go looking for astral projection books or even astral projection videos on Astral Club or elsewhere. The negative side of that is there's often writer's license. Sometimes I imagine it's just plain ignorance. Maybe the writers did a little bit of research, just enough to make an episode, but then they include things that are false, or worse, things that might be scary. But look, I guess it's a trade-off that we have to make to start getting the information out there in a much broader context. So these are the 10 episodes, 10 shows, 10 songs, whatever, that I could think of that I know mentioned astral projection in one form or another. And accurately, inaccurately, it's a wide bag, but I'll kind of discuss them one by one. First up is American Dad. That is a cartoon that has been airing for many years now at this point. And it features a typical American family, if you live in a strange world. And the father is a CIA agent, and then there's the requisite mother for him to play off of, with the daughter and a son. And the son's name is Steve. And in the Wonder Cabinet episode, Steve is bored in his room and he listens to a radio. Can you imagine that? A kid today actually listening to a handheld radio? Talk about a blast from the past. I don't even know if kids today know what radio is. At any rate, he starts hearing this new age channel and he becomes enthralled with the idea of astral projection, of leaving your body. And he experiments, and soon enough, he finds himself out of his body. And in this experience, he wishes to go to Paris. He wishes to go to the end of the universe, to dinosaurs, and then he wants to be shown everything. And it's interesting. I've done all of those things except going to Paris. Even I have standards. But I think it was a fairly accurate, for a cartoon, representation of astral projection. So I was happy about that. Number 2, there is a song, And She Was, by the Talking Heads. This was, you have to go back a bit, back to my baby boomer days. In 1985, the Talking Heads group put out an album called Little Creatures. And this song, And She Was written by a number of people, including David Byrne, who was the lead singer of the Talking Heads. And apparently he'd met some woman who described an acid trip that she had where she then left her body. Now, of course, you don't need LSD to initiate an astral projection, and I would never recommend using illegal drugs, especially since you don't know who made them and where they came from or what they might do or what the proper dosage is. Talk about a little bit of Russian roulette there. But at any rate, she described an experience which is very, very much and sounds very much like an astral projection. And the lyrics are, and she was lying in the grass and she could hear the highway breathing. And she could see a nearby factory, and she's making sure she's not dreaming. So she's out of coincidence with her body early in the projection, and she is getting all this sensory information. She can see a nearby factory through her walls. Then she sees the lights of her neighbor's house, and she's starting to rise. She takes a minute to concentrate, and she opens up her eyes. So essentially what she just did is she asked for her astral vision. That's a minor point that somebody who hasn't actually astral projected probably would not think to discuss or report. And then there's a refrain where she's moving, right above the earth. And it goes on to say she was drifting through the backyard. She's taking off her dress. She's moving very slowly, rising up above the earth. And she's moving into the universe, drifting this way and that, not touching the ground at all. And she's up above the yard. And it goes on a little bit further, but it's very interesting because they're describing an actual astral projection experience. Number 3, Captain Janeway on Star Trek Voyager. In the episode Coda, Captain Janeway is in a shuttlecraft accident, which happens quite often on Star Trek. And she is rendered heavily injured, on the verge of death, and she finds herself in her astral body, even though they don't talk like this. And it sort of takes on the character a little bit of an NDE, a near-death experience, because all of a sudden it seems like her father is there trying to get her to move on. But then we later on find out that it's not really her father, it's this astral monster that wants her to go into his web so he could consume her energy forever. That part I don't like because not only is it inaccurate, but it's scary. I would hate for someone to have their first exposure to out-of-the-body experiences to be this particular one, yet it's one that did come to mind for me. Of course, that's not the only episode that talks about astral projection. There's one that I'm kind of shamed to talk about. It comes from Star Trek, the original series, and is arguably the worst episode of Star Trek ever made. It's called Turnabout Intruder. And in this episode, this woman, Janice Lester, who's a scientist and who used to be a love interest of good old Captain Jim Kirk, she joins the Legion of women from all over the galaxy who have visited his bedroom. And apparently, they broke up and there were some hard feelings. I don't want to get into all that. But anyway, she discovers this alien device and it allows her to go into his body, and then he ends up going into her body. Strange sentence. At any rate, they switch bodies, which is a common trope in this situation, unfortunately. And then they go on, and then everybody discovers what happens, and it's just a very disappointing episode. And, of course, this is not possible. You can't just willy-nilly go into other people's bodies. Now, maybe if you got an alien machine that works, but it doesn't work anywhere else. Yet, it did expose the early Rick to a little bit idea about, oh, look at this astral body thing that's going on. Number 5. Number 4 was the Star Trek Turnabout Intruder. Number 5 is Star Wars Force Ghosts. Well, Force Ghosts are, what do I need to say about it? They're literally the astral body of a Force user. And because the Force user is so strong and can draw so much energy from the Force in this universe that is galaxy rather, that is far, far away, that they're able to actually manifest their astral body such that certain people are able to see them. So that's That certainly is an astral projection-like experience. Number 6, Quantum Leap with Scott Bakula. Quantum Leap was a series that I enjoyed, and it had Dr. Beckett in a laboratory experiment that goes haywire, and he ends up going into the bodies of a wide variety of people whose lives went wrong, and his job is to find out where they went wrong and to correct it. And as soon as he corrects the problem, he then ends up leaping into another body. So what's leaping back and forth into these bodies? All you can think of is his astral self. Number 7, I recently attended a play of the musical Broadway hit Hair. And I don't want to, if you're aware of it, you're aware of it. If not, you can look it up if you're interested. At any rate, it's kind of a 1960s, 1970s flary, hippie kind of movie. And I've seen it in a number of different incarnations. And in this one, they suddenly stop the action. And there's a lot of singing and dancing around. But suddenly they stop the action, and this one young woman gives this young man, who I guess she likes, a book on astral projection. And in the middle of the theater, I almost stood up and went like, woo! Because it was apropos of nothing. It came out of nowhere. So astral projection got itself a little announcement there, and that was surprising. Number 8, there is a British series called Behind Her Eyes. It's a Netflix series, and you can see it there. There was a novel by Sarah Pinborough, and it involves astral projection. It starts with a little poem, which in a way is kind of an incantation, but in also a way, it's kind of the short version of how to astral project or have a lucid dream. Anyway, it goes, pinch myself and say I am awake once per hour. Look at my hands, count my fingers. Look at a clock or a watch. Look away, look back. Stay calm and focused. Think of a door. So somebody did a little bit of research there, and that type of technique is a very simplified way of inducing a lucid dream or an astral projection. And the episode is Behind Her Eyes. And as I said before, there's a lot of other things that go on in this series. It's a very interesting, very surprising series. I don't want to ruin it, but there's some body switching, which once again, I don't like the idea of, because it creates the wrong impression of astral projection. But there we go. That's one for the Brits and for people who've got plenty of time to watch a variety of Netflix series. Number 9, Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is a comic book character. And if you're into this genre, you don't need me to explain. He used to be a world-famous surgeon. He got involved in becoming a wizard, and he mastered magic, gaining all sorts of abilities. And in one particular episode, he is ambushed by this huge demon, taken by surprise. He ends up losing a battle and gets a demonic spear through his body, which would ruin really anyone's day if you think about it, especially since this is his physical body. He gets himself, to a hospital and finds this assistant of his, who is not a surgeon, by the way. And by inhabiting her body or her mind to one degree, he, in essence, ends up using her to perform surgery on himself. That would be a great thing to do if you were a surgeon and an astral projector and you were very sure of your skills. However, I just don't see that happening. If you're astral projecting, you're not going to be able to inhabit anyone's body and perform surgery on yourself. But it's a cool idea. And if you're into the comic book kind of stuff, it's amusing, and it does get into the astral projection end of things. Lastly, number 10 is Soul. Soul was a movie that came out in 2020. It didn't get a lot of advertisement by the movie company, but it was I think one of the better cartoon type movies that dealt with this topic. In this movie, Joe Gardner is a teacher, as a teacher in middle school music, and you can only imagine what kind of hell he goes through on a daily basis, trying to teach these musically challenged children how to play a variety of instruments. But what he truly wants to do is he wants to be a jazz musician. And just when he finally gets a break and he has this opportunity to play with this famous woman who plays really good soul jazz music, or she's a great singer in that genre, he ends up walking along, not paying attention, and falls down an open manhole. He is knocked out and is, in essence, near death or on the verge of death. And his soul ascends to the astral plane, and he finds himself on this enormous escalator. And he figures out that this escalator is taking him to the afterlife, but he does not wish to go to the afterlife, not without his dream being fulfilled. So he hops off the escalator and ends up falling into another area of the astral where he's not supposed to be. In this area of the astral is where the new souls are being prepped for their next incarnation. And as a way of earning his way back into the physical, he has to take on this extremely resistant soul that is not at all interested in incarnating and is extremely intelligent and extremely mischievous and goes out of its way to sabotage every effort that Joe makes to finally get this soul to incarnate. Now, eventually, he does manage to get this soul to reincarnate by taking it through a variety of lessons and showing it that, being in the physical body isn't as bad as the soul thinks it's going to be. So eventually, the soul reincarnates, and Joe is able to return to his body and gets his chance to achieve his dream. So those are the 10 examples that I could think of. What are some examples of astral projection that you can think of that you've seen in music or TV or movies or on Netflix or what have you? I'd love to hear about them. These are just a sampling that I was aware of. If you liked this episode, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already, and 85% of you had, so my goodness. Make sure the bell is solid so you're notified on Wednesday and Saturday when the new episodes come out. And as always, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.